Good morning, all of you. Today we are going to discuss about t-test. In this session, we will discuss what is t-test, when to use the t-test, and what are the different types of t-tests, and what is the formula of t-tests. Now, t-test is a statistical analysis test which is used for statistical data analysis and which analyzes different groups of data. Now let us see what is t-test. A t-test is a statistical test that is used to compare the means of two groups. That is, we will take the two different data groups and we will calculate the means, and we will compare the means of two groups. So when we want to compare means of two groups, then we can perform statistical t-test. It is often used in hypothesis testing to determine whether a process or a treatment actually has an effect on the population of interest, or whether two groups are different from one another or not. Finally, a t-test is a statistical test that is used to compare the means of two groups, and it is often used in hypothesis testing that to determine whether the two groups are different or not from one. They are different from one another or they are same. So if we want to determine that kind of scenario, then we go for a t-test. Now, when to use a t-test? A t-test can be used when comparing the means of two groups. When comparing the means of two groups, not the individual data. When we want to compare the means of two different groups or two groups, then we can use this t-test. If we want to compare more than two groups, that is multiple groups we want to compare, then we can use pairwise comparisons. If we want to do multiple pairwise comparisons, then we go for ANOVA test or post hoc test. These are the tests which can be used for multiple comparisons of groups. Different groups of data మధ్యలో multiple comparisons చేయాలన్నప్పుడు then we go for ANOVA test or post hoc test. So when we compare means of two groups, only two groups comparison, then we go for a t-test. If we have more than two groups, then go for ANOVA test or post hoc test. Now let us see how many types of t-tests are there, which test can be used when. When choosing a t-test, we need to consider two things: whether the groups are being compared from a single population or two different populations. They belongs to same group or two different groups we have to consider. And whether we want to test the differences in specific direction or not, whether we want to test the groups in a specific direction or not. So before going to a t-test, we will consider these two things. The first thing is whether the groups are compared from a single population or two different populations. They are belong to same group or two different groups we will consider. And the other one is the different uh, the comparison, the differentiation is in a specific direction. Test the difference in a specific direction or not. That is also being considered when choosing a t-test. When performing a t-test, we have to consider these things. There are different kinds of t-tests based on the data we will compare. One sample t-test, two sample t-test, paired t-test, one-tailed t-test, and two-tailed t-test. These are the different types of t-tests. So totally there are five types of t-tests: one sample t-test, two sample t-test, paired t-test, one-tailed t-test, or two-tailed t-test. These are the different kinds of tests. Among these, before performing a t-test, we will consider the two things: That is, the groups are come from same group or same single population or same kind of data, or they are of different population or they are of different kind. That is the one thing we will consider before choosing a t-test from among these five. And the other thing is, we want to test the difference between the groups in a specific direction or not, we will consider before choosing a t-test among these five t-tests. Now the t-test name is pair t-test. Now let us see what is pair t-test. If the groups come from a single population, then we perform a paired t-test. Two sample t-test. If the groups come from the two different populations, then we perform two sample t-test. Two sample t-test is also known as independent t-test. Why? Because they are of two different kinds. Hence it is known as independent t-test. For example, two different spices or two different people from two different cities. If we consider two different spices or two different people from two different cities, then it will be of independent from one another. Hence this type of for this type of comparison, to find the differences between these two groups, we can consider two sample t-test. This two sample t-test is also known as independent t-test. One sample t-test, the next one is one sample t-test. If there is one group being compared against a standard value, then we consider one sample t-test. We want to compare one group against a standard value, that is a, a fixed value. If we want to compare a standard value with a one group, then we will consider a sample t-test. For example, comparing the acidity of a liquid to a neutral pH values. pH value of an acidity liquid is 7. So when we are comparing the acidity of a liquid there with the standard value pH, standard value, then we can use one sample. As long as when we are comparing different mathematical values with pi, then also we can use in one sample. So in such kinds of standard values, when we are comparing a group of values with a standard value, then we go for sample t-test. Now the next one, two-tailed t-test. If you only consider the two populations are different from one another, then we perform a two-tailed t-test. If we perform, if we want to compare two populations from different from one another, then we will perform two-tailed t-test. And the next one is one-tailed t-test. If we want to know whether one population mean is greater than or less than the other population, if we want to compare whether the one group is greater than or less than the another group, then we can consider one-tailed t-test. So two-tailed t-test is used when there are two different groups. Two different groups, they are differ from one another, then we go for two-tailed t-test. If we are considering or we are comparing one different group with another in the in kind of if one is greater than or less than the other, in such cases we go for one-tailed t-test. So these are the different kinds of t-tests that is used in the statistical analysis of data. In comparison of statistical data analysis, we will consider different kinds of t-tests. So when for comparison of groups, for comparison between two different groups or between two groups, we will perform t-test. Among the to perform t-test, we are having different kinds of t-tests. Based on the data, we have to compare. Based on the data we are analyzing, we will take t-test type among the different types of t-tests. So there are five types of t-test. One sample t-test, two sample t-test, paired t-test, one-tailed t-test, two-tailed t-test. So these are the different kinds of t-test, and they can be used among statistical data analysis. The t-test estimate the true difference between two group means using the ratio of the difference in groups. The t-test estimate the true difference between two groups. Two group means not individual group data. Two group mean values. And using the ratio of the difference in group means over the standard error of both the groups. So t-test estimate the true difference between two group means using ratio of ratio of the different group means value to the standard error of both groups. So finally, the t-test the formula to perform t-test is t is equal to x1 bar minus x2 bar divided by root of s square into 1 by n1 plus 1 by n2. T is the t-test coefficient. So t is equal to x1 bar minus x2 bar divided by square root of s square into 1 by n1 plus 1 by n2. In this formula, x1 and x2 are the means of the two groups being compared, mean values of the groups which we are comparing. And s2 is the standard error of the two groups. And n1 and n2 are the number of observations in each group. And a larger t value shows that is the description of different variables in the formula. Now, a larger t value shows that the difference between group means is greater than the standard error. If the t value is larger, it shows the difference between group means is greater than the standard error, which indicates a more significant difference between the two groups. So if the t value is larger, group mean is greater than the actual standard error, which indicates that value indicates the significance difference between the two groups. So this is about what is t-test, when we use t-test, and types of t-test. What is t-test, when to use a t-test, and types of t-test, and the formula used for t-test. Thank you.